51, pick us 52.
Okay, go ahead.
2 at a compressor stall right motor.
Okay, 1 copy.
Pecos 51 Shoehorn.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it looked like the number 2 aircraft had an orange spark on the right side. Couldn't tell if it was a blowout or flame.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Mondays with Mover. I am Mover, C.W. Lemoine, author of the Spectre series, Absolute Vengeance, and I am the Sheepdog, which are both part of the Alex Shepard series. Hope you guys are having a great week. Coming to you from Panama City, Panama, on the road this weekend. So I figured we'd get right into stuff we talked about last time, which was how to become a fighter pilot, kind of from the target forward. So the way we usually mission plan is you start with the target and you work your way backwards. So, if your objective is to become a fighter pilot, I figured I'd go through some of the definitions and stuff, just kind of the baseline stuff, just so we're all on the same page. Starting with your goal or your mission, which is to become a fighter pilot, and you set your objectives. And, we talk about anytime we set objectives, they have to be specific, measurable, and attainable. So, you want to make sure that, your objectives along the way match that. Like, I'm going to get a 4-year degree. I'm going to get my private pilot's license. I'm going to, have a GPA of greater than, 3.0, or I'm going to do, greater than a 90 on the AFOQT pilot stuff. So we'll talk about that on the way. It'll be a multi-part series, but for right now, I just want to kind of go over the basics of just how it works, because I know there's some questions on that. So starting, it's going to be a little bit more Air Force centric. I know I've flown both in the Navy and the Air Force, but my knowledge is based off, for at least the early part, is based on the Air Force, because that's what I did. But I will talk a little bit of Navy, Marine Corps stuff along the way. So starting from the target, which is to fly the fighter, let's call it the F-16 or the F-22 or whatever, your mission qualification training, MQT, that is your initial training. Once you finish school, you're a combat ready wingman. So going from there and working our way backwards. Before that, you go what's called the B course, the basic course, and that's just qualifying you in the aircraft, for this example, the F-16. And, it's about, depending on the course, between 4 and 6 months. And that just teaches you how to fly the airplane, get you get your instrument qualification, just get you basic, very basic stuff, and then, from there. Prior to that is IFF, Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals, and that is in a T-38C. And that is kind of a transition for fighter guys to kind of get that fighter pilot mentality, because UPT, they teach you the basic airwork stuff, but once you get to IFF, that's when the mentality shifts and they kind of try to simulate more of a fighter squadron. They teach you basic fighter maneuvers, which is BFM, that's dogfighting. They teach you basic surface attack, BSA, dropping bombs or simulated bombs. So that's about an 8-week course at the UPT bases or at Randolph. And then undergraduate pilot training, so 54 weeks. I'm not going to talk next-gen stuff. I'm not going to talk any of the new stuff, because I know there's some talk about virtual reality and all this other junk, but for right now I'm just going to talk the basic things. So UPT is kind of the decision factor of becoming a fighter pilot. You start, you go phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 is ground school. Everybody starts out the same, and everybody, guard, reserve, active duty, everybody's on a level playing field. And then you go to phase 2, which is your T6 course. That's where you learn basic aerodynamics, basic formation, the basic concepts behind military flying, the basic instruments, all that stuff. And that's kind of where they start separating. You're graded on every flight. You start out, everybody's equal. And as you go, behind the scenes, the flight commanders and stuff are ranking people. And, by the end of T6s, they call it track select. So this is where The active duty guys will determine whether they're going to go fighters, heavies, helos, C-130s. And if you go fighters, you go to T-38s. If you go heavies, you go to the T-1. If you go to the helos, I think they send them out to go train with the Army. And then if you go C-130s or something like that, they send them down to go fly the King Air. From phase 2 becomes phase 3, and that is for a fighter guy. Phase 3 is your T-38 training, so it's pretty much the same as phase 2 flying wise. They add a little bit of tactical formation, so instead of flying real close close together, you're in a mile line abreast tactical. They kind of introduce some of those concepts, but now you're flying a supersonic fighter, although they don't go supersonic anymore. Sorry. You're flying a supersonic, at least not intentionally. You're flying a supersonic fighter, and it's more of it's a more higher level course. They're expecting more out of students, and then towards the end of that is when you get your assignment. So at the end of phase 3, towards graduation time, that's when guys will get the drop, is what it's called. And they'll find out if they're going to go, F-16s, F-15s, F-22, A-10. I don't know if they're doing F-15s anymore. Anyway, they'll get their drop. Some guys will have what's called a first assignment IP, a FAPE. So they'll go right back into either flying the T-6 or the T-38 as an instructor pilot. And that's a 3-year school. And then from there, they'll get their fighter or whatever follow-on they have. So that's UPT, you get your wings, and then like I said, you go on the IFF and stuff. So prior to that, Guard Reserve guys know kind of what they're doing already. They have been hired by units, specific units. Montgomery, for example, they have F-16s. Buckley's got F-16s. They're hired specifically to fly whatever that aircraft is, and that's Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard. For the active duty side, they have multiple ways of commissioning. For the Guard, now it's just Guard and Reserve. It's just Officer Training School, which is I think 12 weeks now. But for the active duty, they have 3 different ways they can commission. They can commission through Officer Training School, and there's been a couple questions about that. When you go to Officer Training School, you already know that you've got a pilot slot. Like they could meet the board for pilot, nav, or whatever it is. So when I went to Officer Training School, there were active duty people there. They already knew they were going to go be pilots. Then there's ROTC. So ROTC is at the college. And you'll get your pilot slot, I think junior or senior year is when they kind of figure that out. But that's a commissioning source. And then the Air Force Academy, obviously. But your commissioning source, going back to that, has absolutely nothing to do with what you fly. Just because you fly or just because you went to the Air Force Academy doesn't mean you're going to be a fighter pilot automatically. That's, like I talked about in the 5 minutes, that's not necessarily true. All it does is everybody's a second lieutenant. So everybody shows up as a second lieutenant, although, some guys come from different backgrounds. We had a captain in our class, and he'd cross-trained from a different field. On the Navy side, you've got the RAG is what it's called. That's the learn how to fly the Super Hornet or, the F-35 or whatever. And then you've got, their primary flight school and stuff, the ground school and all that stuff. Very similar. In fact, sometimes they send Navy guys for phase 2, just like us. The difference, though, is that there's no Guard Reserve. There are reserve units in the Navy Reserve. I flew for one. But there's no, they don't hire off the street. So, they're not sending guys to pilot training that get hired, for example, to go fly for VFA 204 or something like that. So the only commissioning sources are through OCS, Officer Candidate School, ROTC, and then the Academy. So you're going to be active duty, whether they have flight contracts and all that stuff, which is pretty similar to what the Air Force does. I mean, for OTS, the places that are not guaranteed flight spots are, ROTC. I think they make you commit before you actually know if you're going to fly an airplane. And then the Air Force Academy, you're already kind of committed because you've done all that schooling and stuff. But for OTS, if you're an off the street hire, or for Air Force Reserve Command or Air National Guard, you're definitely going to know. So just to recap, so you got to commission, got to have that first, and then once you commission, you go to pilot training, then you go to Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals, then you go to the B course, then you get MQT. In between that, there's some other schools you'll have to go to, which have nothing to do with specifically being a fighter pilot. You'll have to go to water survival, which is, when I went, it was down in Pensacola, which is water survival in the Navy is very different than water survival in the Air Force. Air Force kind of a gentlemanly thing. It's pretty fun. Navy is, you got to do the helo dunker and you got to do these underwater mazes and stuff, and it sucks. I never want to do it again. Thankfully, I don't have to. And on the Air Force side, both sides actually, you got to do SEER, which is Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. For us, it was up in Fairchild, and you learn how to survive in the woods, up in the mountains, and then you get a little bit of resistance training and stuff like that. I will not spoil that for you. It's better if you see it on your own. You also have to go to the centrifuge if you're a fighter guy, depending on what you fly. The T-38 during phase 3, we go and do, I think it's the 6G profile. It's not much, just to get you acclimated. I didn't like the fuge. And then you go back once you find out what you fly. And if you're, F-22, F-15, F-16, 9G fighter, you're gonna have to go do the 9G profile, which is a bitch. Yeah, not gonna lie. Although I think the guys with A tags are doing a little better than back in my day. Anyway, so that's it. That's just kind of the overview of how to get there. From there, we'll talk about some keys to success for rushing a unit. That's my recommendation, is to go through the Guard Reserve, just because that's what I did, and I think that's a much better deal, because you know where you're going to live, you know what you're going to fly, and you can kind of set routes. You're not tied to that every 3-year movement stuff. So, but however, I'll talk about some keys to success, just in general. So in future videos, we'll talk about how to do well in officer training school, which is going to be a short video because everybody what they call the #1 graduate of officer training school. It's second lieutenant, so it doesn't really matter. And then for pilot training is the big one. I'll do a whole video on that, on how to succeed in pilot training, because there are some keys to success. I can tell you #1 on every one of these videos, it's don't be a douche. I mean, that's by and far the biggest thing. For rushing a unit, for doing well. I mean, if you just think about it, am I being a douche? And then don't be a douche, you'll probably do well. So, and then, we can talk about being, successful in the squadron stuff. So, appreciate all the comments. I know some of these videos have gotten a lot of views, a lot of responses. So I've tried to answer as many questions as I can. Sorry if I haven't gotten to yours. Like I said, I'm, working a couple jobs and I can't necessarily answer every question. So hopefully some of these videos will help with that. On the writing front, for those of you who, pay attention to the writing stuff, working on the books, still writing, and we're working on a Netflix treatment for Absolute Vengeance to hopefully adapt it into a TV series. So that's a pretty exciting project that I've been working on. Other than that, that's about it. If you have any suggestions for a video, please put it in the comment below. Like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. I've got a list of videos that I hope to get to in the next several weeks. So thanks for watching. Tune in next time, and I'll see you later.